The Troubles were a series of conflicts located mainly in Northern Ireland that lasted about 30 years, from the late 60s to 1998. Before talking about this, it is necessary to make some premises, starting with Henry VIII.
Henry VIII was the first Tudor king of England. He succeeded his father at the age of 18. First, he was a fervent Catholic. In fact, he wrote an act called Luther and later received the title of Defender of the Faith. But when the Pope refused his request to declare his first marriage invalid, Henry divorced with Catherine and created the Act of Supremacy. With this act, Henry broke with the Pope, who declared himself the leader of the Church of England and transformed England into a Protestant country. His religious revolution was extended to Wales and Ireland. He suppressed a lot of monasteries, confiscated a lot of Catholic lands, and sold them. But the Catholic Irish population didn't want to become Protestant. They wanted to remain Catholic, because this was the original religion of the country. When Henry died, his daughter Mary I wanted to restore Catholicism in England, but this was only a brief period, because when Elizabeth I came to throne, she established the Protestant religion. She became Queen of England at the age of 25. This was an age of great stability of reforms. For example, he started exploring the sea, organized battle against the Spanish Armada. She continued the term of the Act of Supremacy. For this reason, church doctrine was Protestant, but she was a tolerance with the other religion. So you're probably asking, what does this have to deal with the Irish Trouble? Because at the same time, she wanted to spread the Protestant religion to Ireland, and for this reason she decided to build 13 cities in the northern part of England to host Scotland Protestants. Another important thing to remember is that Ireland became part of UK in 1801, so its parliament was abolished.
Later, in 1905, was founded the movement Sinn Féin by Arthur Griffith. The members of this movement formed a rebel military group called the IRA, Irish Republican Army, that was a clandestine military organization. During the World War I, some Irish volunteers organized a rebellion in Dublin on April 24 in 1916 that later became known as Easter Monday. The insurrection was planned by Patrick Pearse, Tom Clark, and several other leaders of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. The latter had about 16,000 members and was armed with German weapons smuggled into the country in 1914. Even though they were defeated and a lot of people died, they became the symbol of the Irish heroism because they fought united for the same goal, the independence of Ireland. Later, Sinn Féin became a political party with the aim of gaining the independence. Indeed, after the victory of the election in December 1918, on 21 January 1919, they formed their own government, the Dáil, and declared the Irish independence. The famous poet Butler Yeats dedicated a poem to the Easter Monday because even if he was a nationalist, he rejected the use of violence. In fact, the death of these people was a shock for him, so he decided to pay a tribute to the leaders who were killed. For most of 1919, IRA activity involved capturing weaponry and freeing Republican prisoners, and began ambushing British Army troops, while the Dáil set about building a state. The British government responded with recruits from Britain, the Black and Tans, and auxiliaries. Thus, the conflict is sometimes called the Black and Tan War. The conflict developed gradually, involving also civilians.
On Bloody Sunday in Dublin, the 21st November in 1920, 14 British intelligence operatives were assassinated, and then the British Army fired at the Gaelic football match, killing 14 civilians and wounding 65. With the signing of the treaty with Britain was sanctioned the division of the island in Northern Ireland and the Eyre. Under the name of Irish Volunteers, after the division of Ireland in 1921, the IRA formed the armed wing of the Catholic Republican opposition of Ulster, in support of the reunification of the entire island, making itself responsible for violent military campaigns in the decades to come, with terror actions in Ulster and Britain. After that, a ceasefire was declared on 11th July of 1921, and the Irish Free State was created on 6 December 1922, as an entity independent from the United Kingdom, even if the 6 northern counties remained a part of the UK, with their own parliament in Belfast. This establishment led to the Irish Civil War, waged between two opposing groups, the forces of the Free State and the IRA, because saw the Irish Free State as a betrayal of the Irish Republic. Many of those who fought on both sides in the conflict had been members of the IRA during the War of Independence. On 24th May of 1923, the leader of the IRA issued a ceasefire order to IRA volunteers. Then, on January 30 in 1972, there was a demonstration happened in Londonderry, Northern Ireland, led by Roman Catholic civil rights supporters. This revolution turned violent when British soldiers began to open fire, killing 13 and injuring 14. This day will be remembered soon as the Bloody Sunday.
Beginning in the mid-1970s, the IRA shifted the emphasis of its long war from direct engagements with British troops to smaller-scale operations, including the bombing of cities in Britain, a change of tactics that the British military described as a shift from insurgency to terrorism. Similarly, the Loyalist group began setting off bombs in Ireland. Meanwhile, paramilitary violence at the mid-decade caused the death of 317 Catholics and 88 Protestants. A glimmer of hope was offered by the Sangendale Agreement, named for the English city in which it was negotiated in 1973. That agreement led to the creation of a new Northern Ireland Assembly, with a proportional representation for all parties, and to the establishment of a Council of Ireland, which was to provide a role for Ireland in the affair of Northern Ireland. Frustrated by the diminution of their political power and furious at the participation of the Republic, Loyalists scattered the power-sharing plan with a general strike that brought the province to a halt in May 1974 and eventually forced a return to direct rule, which remained in place for some 25 years.
In 1976, the opening of the specially designed Maid's prison brought a shift in the treatment of IRA inmates, from the prisoner of Wars I to the one of common criminals. Seeking a return to their special category status, the prisoners first organized the blanket protest, in which they refused to put on prison uniforms and instead wore only blankets. And then, in 1978, the Dirty Protest, in which inmates spread excrement on their cells' walls. The government of recently elected Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher refused to bend herself, even in the face of hunger strike in 1980-1981 that led to the death of 10 prisoners, including Bobby Sands, who had won a seat in the British Parliament while incarcerated and suffering the hunger. Sands' election helped convince Sinn Féin that the struggle for unification should be pursued at the ballot box as well as with their army. In June 1983, Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams won a seat in the Parliament representing West Belfast, though he refused to take it to avoid taking the compulsory oath of loyalty to the British Queen. In October 1984, an IRA bomb attack on the Conservative Party conference in Brighton, England, took 5 lives and threatened the death of Thatcher. Though she remained constantly in the face of this attack, it was the Iron Lady who, in November 1985, joined Irish Taoiseach Garret FitzGerald in signing the Anglo-Irish Agreement, under which both countries guaranteed that any change in the status of Northern Ireland would come only with the consent of the majority of the people of Northern Ireland. The accord also established the Intergovernmental Conference, which gave Ireland a consultative role in the political and security affairs of Northern Ireland for the first time. Finally, the agreement stipulated that power would be devolved back upon the government of Northern Ireland only if Unionists and Nationalists participated in power sharing.
The Loyalist opposition to the agreement included the resignation of all 15 Unionist members of the House of Commons and the ramping up of violence. In the meantime, IRA bombing in London made headlines, and the reach of the British security forces extended to the killing of the 3 provosts in Gibraltar. Behind the scenes, however, negotiations were underway. In 1993, British Prime Minister John Major and Irish Taoiseach Albert Reynolds issued the so-called Downing Street Declarations, which established a framework for all-party peace talks. A ceasefire declared by the Provost in 1994 and joined by the principal Loyalist paramilitary group fell apart in 1996 because Sinn Féin, which had replaced the more moderate Social Democratic Labour Party as the leading nationalist party, it had been excluded from the peace talks because of the IRA's continuing bombing campaign. Nevertheless, the Unionists were at the table, prepared to consider a solution that included the participation of the Republic of Ireland. After the IRA resumed its ceasefire in 1997, Sinn Féin was welcomed back to the talks. Those talks, mediated by former Osage Senator George Mitchell, led to the Good Friday Agreement, or Belfast Agreement, reached on the 10th of April 1998. That landmark accord provided for the creation of a power-sharing Northern Ireland Assembly, established an institutional arrangement for cross-border cooperation between the governments of Ireland and Northern Ireland on a range of issues, and laid the groundwork for continued reconciliation between the British and Irish governments.
On May 22, Ireland and Northern Ireland held a joint referendum on the agreement, which was approved by 94% of those who voted in the Republic and 71% of those voting in Northern Ireland, where Catholic approval of the accord was much higher than the Protestant assent. However, it was an IRA splinter group, the Real Irish Republican Army, which most dramatically violated the spirit of the agreement with the bombing in Omagh in August that took 29 lives. Elections for the new assembly were held in June, but the IRA's failure to decommission delayed the formation of the power-sharing Northern Ireland Executive until December 1999, when the IRA promised to keep its obligation to disarm. That month, the Republic of Ireland modified its constitution, removing its territorial claims to the whole of the island, and the United Kingdom obtained direct rule of Northern Ireland. Clearly, the troubles had come to end. But, though Northern Ireland became its more tranquil era for a long time, the peace was fragile. Extremist antagonism persisted, the process of decommissioning was slow on both sides, and the rolling out of the new institutions was fickle, resulting in suspensions of devolution and the reimposition of direct rule. In July 2005, however, the IRA announced that it had ordered all its units to dump arms, so from this day on, will pursue its goals only through peaceful means. Thanks for watching.